And at the top of the evening, everybody, Chris McDonald with you on this Monday night, the 27th day of January. This is the International Remembrance Holocaust Day today. Got the 45-47 hat on tonight. We're grateful to have you. We got Magdalene Rose coming up here in just a second. And she is getting ready to come on tonight and talk with us a little bit in a minute. We hope we can get her on. We planned on her coming on tonight, but we'll see if that pans out. I wanted to just take a few minutes. We are going to talk a little bit tonight on the show about the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This is a day that the world, now it's already taken place over in Israel. Israel is 6 hours ahead of us, so it's already the 28th over there. But it's going to be a theme this week of the show. And it's funny that we do it. We're doing this tonight in a way that we were in D.C. over the weekend marching for the babies, and we talked a great deal about that on Sunday. And then tonight and this week we're going to be dealing with another situation that happened 80 years ago, and that's the Holocaust. And I'll take your questions and thoughts shortly. I'm going to go ahead and get Magdalene on the phone and get her. We're going to talk about the inauguration with her, and then we're going to talk more about the Holocaust here tonight with you. I do want to just say this. We are grateful to have you tonight on a Monday night, and pardon the tech glitches. We're having the, it is the gremlin night, and it must be this cold winter weather. That's all I got to say. But we are grateful to have you tonight, and we hope that you are, Rosemary, it wasn't you getting kicked out. It wasn't you, it was us. And folks, look, we will tell you if there's issues, and there was some technical issues trying to get signed on, so it wasn't you. But y'all just give me your attention now. I'm going to call Magdalene Rose, and we're going to see if Magdalene can come on the phone. And we're going to talk to her a little bit tonight about some things, and then we'll talk with you. Magdalene Rose, how are you, dear?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, good, good. I was running a little late, so we got you sort of at the beginning of the show. Just how we planned it, right? We had planned it. I was going to come on at 9 o'clock, and I was told her I was going to warm everybody up for her. And so thanks to Chris's tech glitch, you're right at the beginning of the show tonight. We're glad to have you, kid. How you been doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It's been a cold winter, that's for sure. It has been chilly, chilly, chilly. Hey, you know, lots happened. President Trump's been in office. He got inaugurated Monday, and this is our first interview since then. I want your thoughts about that. And he's had a whirlwind week, Magdalene. I tell you what, he's not left any stone unturned, has he?
No, he hasn't. And I think one of the things that was great about the inauguration is that it showcased so many people within his repertoire to put up. Whether or not you had Vance or the second lady or anybody, there was a whole grouping of people. It didn't have to just be him. And if you think back to the first inauguration, he had to carry that almost solely because Pence didn't have a lot of charisma. There wasn't as deep a bench of competent speakers. That was not the case this time.
Of all the things that he's done, and he's done a lot, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that he has done everything that he's promised people he would do. I heard Stephen J. Smith, the liberal commentator from ESPN, and even he had to admit that this is not Joe Biden. And he said, look, he said, Trump, you can hate him, love him, in between or whatever, but he has kept his word. And we're going to play some video here later of Thomas Holman. We're going to a lot of themes this week. We're going to be talking about the border. We're going to be talking about the Holocaust tonight a little bit. But Trump has kept his promise, Magdalene, and he is. I tell you, he's firing. There's been a house cleaning. I don't know if people understand it. There's been close to 1,000 people fired in D.C. since Monday in all these departments, and they are taking a broom and they're cleaning the stuff that smells out of D.C. tonight. And I'm all for it. I think it's good. It's going to be good for the country.
Yes, it is. And I think what's nice is that this White House seems much more organized. It's much more put together. And in addition to that, he's also doing this in a much more comprehensive way. So, of course, he tried to get rid of the bad actors in the first administration, but he didn't understand the systems of government like he does now. He didn't understand government bureaucracy. So you see the notices we get that he's fired over 17 inspector generals, but that he's also kept a few. He seems to have this understanding of how to dismantle the corruption of government at a much higher level. He's getting rid of one of the leaders of the Coast Guard. He is doing this, and he went in with a list of the top people to get rid of. And I think that's why they fought so hard for Pete Hegseth, because if Pete Hegseth hadn't gotten confirmed, they had to go through the whole process. I think he probably would have chosen Governor DeSantis, but they would have had to go through the vetting process and the hearings. By getting Hegseth in, they could begin the gutting of the Pentagon, which Trump couldn't really do without his own Secretary of Defense in there. So it is systematic and it is really organized.
Yeah, he does seem to be more tempered too. I think the thing with McConnell, Trump of 2016 would have probably dropped about 16 bombs on Mitch. And his response when they told him Mitch voted no against Hegseth was actually quite tame. I mean, it was actually, he's like, well, you know, it's the main thing, we got him in and we'll live to fight another day tomorrow. The Trump of old would have, that'd have been a new nickname for Mitch in 2025, and he sort of bypassed that. And I think it's good. Like, I think it's a positive thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Chris would have dropped the bomb. I'm just saying. I wouldn't have been as tempered as he would. And Magdalene would have had to call me up and say, hey, behave yourself, you know, and be presidential. Don't be a Southerner. Be presidential, right?
Yeah, and I think that's a good indicator of where he's at. Like, if you betray him, I think the position he's adapting is, if you betray me, I'll just do nothing for you and do what I can to destroy you quietly. He doesn't need to unleash fire unless you're a Democrat. Whereas when Democrats were yelling at Pete and Pete Hegseth during the confirmation battles and causing problems, he had no problem torching them on Twitter. He had no problem going after them. However, if you look at what he's done to people like John Bolton, he is not going to let certain things go. I mean, the things he revoked his security clearance, his Secret Service. There are a lot of former top government officials who I think knew what would happen to them if Trump got in office, and that's why they became never-Trumpers. They didn't become never-Trumpers because they necessarily disagree with his policies. They became never-Trumpers because they didn't want to deal with the ramifications of their behavior. People like John Bolton. And I think someone we have to look out for to see if he also suffers consequences is Mike Pompeo. Because Trump let this little tidbit slip during an interview, and I think it was on purpose with Hannity. He said he didn't declassify the MLK files because Pompeo asked him not to, and the JFK files. That, to me, shows that Mike Pompeo had a lot of negative influence within that White House.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because Fauci's security detail has been removed, Pompeo's. And, you know, Magdalene, I think that's the other thing that's so refreshing, that he has not, there, to my knowledge, now, again, time will tell because he's been down this road before and people betrayed him. DeSantis tonight's having some problems with his legislator, with some of these Republicans. And people get into power, they do crazy stuff. But I do like his cabinet makeup, and I think he's got people that are going to play team ball and play ball for the team, but not going to play ball for themselves. But Pompeo, I never did like him, and I think that this is my generation compared to yours, perhaps, where we're different. But if the left and the rhinos are screaming for you not to do something, that's 1,000,000% reason why you do it. And if Pompeo was telling him don't release the files, I would release him yesterday. I wouldn't even question it, because if the establishment don't want you to release something, there's probably something in there the establishment don't want us to know. So I'm all for it, and I'm with you. I don't think he's got an enemies list, as the left claimed, but I think that he's got a list of people that he is not going to let some stuff go, and I think Pompeo was on that list. And look, I got no problem with him revoking the security clearance. I've got no problem with him firing them 17 inspector generals. I've got no problem with him firing 51 generals that claimed the Hunter Biden laptop was a farce. I don't think we even got started with the Russia collusion stuff yet. And I think the house cleaning's coming to the FBI. I think the house cleaning's already started in the DOD tonight. Hexteth renamed Fort Benning, one of the air bases in my home state of Georgia, and Fort Bragg in North Carolina. The DEI crap of the Lloyd Austin nightmare was renaming bases because people thought it was prejudice, and that crap's going to end. It has ended. And I think we're about to get down to business and run a country like it should be run, my friend.
I think that's true. And also Marco Rubio at the State Department. What is interesting is that Marco Rubio was somebody who was much more in the neocon area. And I think a lot of that was just the lack of experience. I think Marco is always somebody who was a Republican, and I can empathize with that, being a young Republican forever. You don't have a time when you're a Democrat. So you take in the ideas that sort of are prevalent when you're forming your positions. And when he was going through school and everything, it was a more neocon landscape. So I think it was hard for him to step away from that, and I understand that because he was never a Democrat. So growing up in his sort of later years in office, I'm seeing the Trump administration unfold, not being so green, going through a brutal presidential primary, and then deciding to continue being a senator. Because remember, he didn't want to run again after 2016, and they pretty much told him, you have no choice, because Florida was not so solidly red. He got the baby Republicanness out of his system. And having watched his Senate confirmation hearings, the level of knowledge that man has retained and is able to easily access was so wildly impressive. There was a moment with Cory Booker, the senator for the Democrat left-wing senator from New Jersey, where they were talking about the Sudan and the genocides going on there. So he is somebody who Democrats had to own up to universally respecting, which is why he got universally confirmed. So seeing him run the State Department, seeing Pete Hegseth run the Defense Department, they're very different men. Obviously, one of them had no personal scandals to deal with or to contend with, but they are people who know their areas and will get rid of the sort of surplus DEI hires. So they're serving the same purpose as ahead of those respective areas of government.
Do you believe RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard get through the hurdles? Because that's really the two big names out there left that have got to get confirmed. Everybody else, Trump's got pretty much everybody that he's asked for to this point.
Yeah.
And Ratcliffe got a huge pullover from the Dems. Rubio did, as you mentioned. They had the Treasury Secretary tonight. So it's down to RFK and Tulsi. You think they get in?
I think RFK gets in. I think that the standard ethically for him is much lower because he's a Democrat. So, for example, Tim Kaine from Virginia, a Democrat, was very nasty to Pete Hegseth about his marriages and things. There was sort of the overall meanness to him about that. But RFK Jr. is a sort of, in some ways, Hollywood Democrat. So I think he's going to get through. The problem Trump has is Tulsi Gabbard. Not necessarily because Republicans are not being loyal or Democrats are being difficult. She's not been great in meetings, and she's not had her financials and her vetting papers, the stuff that happens behind the scenes, compiled in a timely manner. There's been a real lack of preparedness from her. And I think that's been frustrating for the Trump team. And that's not stuff Democrats stonewall are involved in. It's, did you get your stuff together in time? Were you able to comply with the FBI background check in time? These are not things Democrats sabotaged her with. Yeah. And then in addition, there's a lot of reports that when she's in meetings with Republican senators, she struggles. I don't know if she's really understanding the level of responsibility about to be placed on her.
Does your age group understand this birthright citizenship thing? What's your opinion about that? I've got a friend of mine, and she's in her 80s, and we saw her today, and she was actually telling me that she was not, that was the only thing that she felt like Trump had done so far that she was not on board with, because she had a lot of compassion for the babies that were born, and out of respect for my elders, I didn't do this too harshly, but I told her, I said, if we lived in a fair, equitable world where people were truly caring for the babies and not doing this to come over here illegally, I would agree with you. But, Magdalene, my opinion is that if the mother's illegal and the daddy's illegal, that baby's illegal. And that's just how I feel. But I'm curious how your generation views this, because I know I'm a little more tougher. And there's a lot of people that don't agree with this birthright citizenship thing that Trump's doing. I do. Curious how your age group feels.
Yeah, my age group in the right wing world agrees with what Trump is doing completely. I mean, there are people who are outliers, the more rhinos, but I will tell you overall, there is a massive agreement. And it's not out of a lack of compassion. It's just reality. And I think one of the things people don't realize is that the amount of backlog that you face when you go into the healthcare system or you go into the education system. For example, today there are posts all over Twitter and Facebook of moms who take their kids to doctors or to dentists. And they go in, and today those rooms are empty or there's only a few people and there's not huge wait lines because people are not going because they're afraid of ICE visits, because they're afraid that they're going to be found out. There is a huge issue in this country with the taking away of resources from American children of all backgrounds, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, who are American citizens with parents who are American citizens and all of that in every income bracket. Those spots in healthcare and a lot of things in education are taken away by illegal immigrants who had one child so they got to stay.
Right.
And that has been going on my entire childhood. And we've seen it grow. I mean, just as a child, watching it develop, especially when we got into the late 2010s, the explosion of that. So young right-wingers don't think that this citizenship thing makes sense at this point. In terms of you have a baby, neither parent is a citizen, neither parent even speaks English, and the whole family can stay. And then you have the issue of chain migration, which Trump introduced to public understanding in 2016. Obama administration made that very sneaky. People did not understand what was happening. I think that those situations, the backlog, the overcrowding we having in schools, in the last week seems to have disappeared. There's only one reason why that's happened.
That is so interesting, and I was holding my breath. I'm glad you do. I'm glad your age group feels this way. I do. It gives me hope because there's a lot of people, even on the right, that they play the compassion card, and I don't think that that's a fair. You can't play the compassion card with this situation. In a real world, maybe, but Magdalene, this system has been so abused, and these people are doing this deliberately. This is not some situation where they're fleeing their homeland, they're coming over to the country, wanting to assimilate right. And this is the way I look at it. My friend today has a person that works for her. She does houses, even at this late age, and he's illegal, okay? And he was telling her this week, he said, well, I'm afraid Trump's coming to get me. And she said, I didn't know what to tell him. And her second son told her, I said, well, I got a suggestion for him. And she said, what's that? I said, get your butt down to a citizenship clinic and get citizenship. Get legal.
Yeah.
That'll keep you from being deported. And you know what she told me? She said, nobody will help him and he don't want to do that. And the way I look at that is this. If they don't want to get legal, they don't want to come in here the right way, they don't have any rights, Mag. They don't have any right to anything, including their unborn baby. And let me just say this while I'm at it. I was at the Right Life March Friday. I think it's the biggest hypocrisy of the millennial, not the decade, not the century, but the millennial. For the left to argue that the unborn baby in a woman's womb, when she wants to kill it, is a fetus, but the unborn baby of an illegal that wants to claim the baby's a real child to come in here illegally is a child. That's hypocrisy. That's wickedness. That is absolute, insane, hypocritical, demonic thinking. Because you can't have it both ways. Because they want to kill the baby in the unborn woman's womb. That's not illegal. But the illegal alien, no, we can't kill that. That's a real child, and y'all are being inhumane to the real children. That's nothing but hypocrisy.
It is hypocrisy, and it's very frustrating because we all stand here as pro-life people who have worked forever to get people to realize that unborn children have rights. Yes. And then we are told we're bad and wrong. And yet you want to grant the right of citizenship to an entire line, an entire family line. It could be 50 people because of an unborn child. Or that, to me, it's ridiculous. It is complete nonsense. And it shows that they know it's murder. They know what they're doing is wrong, but they don't care, which is even worse. And I think one of the things that's important here is the philosophical direction of this administration. In many ways, it's also being influenced by J.D. Vance, who is a hard right conservative, who is a practicing Catholic, who is very pro-life. His first public appearance as vice president was at the March for Life. To me, that shows that this administration, it's unflinching. And one of the things that young right-wingers have really wanted is we've wanted an end to this birthright citizenship thing because it's not serving America. And one of the things Marco Rubio, as Secretary of State, has said is that the foreign policy of this country is shaped by what is serving America, what makes America stronger. This effort of birthright citizenship, it's not serving America. And Trump finally is accepting that and being public about it.
That's so true, buddy. That's so true. Well, and this is it. You actually made my night that your generation believes that you're thinking like us. And I mean that. I don't mean that to be light about it. I was really surprised because I would have thought that the younger people would probably, even on the right, would be more compassionate about it. But I think your analysis is square on. I was watching the chat. People are agreeing with you. Magdalene, it's not a compassion issue. And see, the left has done this to us for probably 15, 20 years now, even in the Bush years. Whenever we try to close our border and secure our border, they always throw up the compassion, religion, faith thing, that you people of faith, y'all are being so inhumane to these illegals. And they never stop to talk about the inhumanity to the people that have been killed by these illegals, the ones that have been raped and murdered and pillaged and ran over by drunk drivers, and the jobs that have been lost, and the cheap labor that the Republicans want with them, the voting bloc the Democrats want with them. I had a dear friend in Morristown, Tennessee, back in November. I was riding in the car with him, and I still laugh about it to this day. We were talking about this illegal voting bloc because the Democrats were banking on this, that the illegals would come across and, all vote Democrat. And he was telling me, he said, Chris, I got money in my pocket that the economy under Joe Biden got so bad that these illegals probably turned out voting for Trump because they're like, we're going back to our own country. This is worse than our homeland. So I'd rather have Trump running the country, even if it means getting us deported, than Joe Biden. And I know that's funny, but I'm not so sure that ain't too far from true, buddy. I think that there was a lot of them that said, screw this. We don't want to live in a Joe Biden world.
No, we don't. And I think it's an interesting point because Democrats are acting as sort of, as they always do, as if white women betrayed them and we've caused the Handmaid's Tale. And just for reference, we have spent 4 years with an administration trying to kill everybody. They've set the world on fire in foreign policy. Anthony Blinken, our former Secretary of State, he entered into a position where the world was pretty secure. The terror attacks of the Obama years had dissipated. ISIS was destroyed. Trump had taken out major terrorism leaders. Everything was going okay. Not perfect, but okay. By the time he exited, Ukraine had been invaded by Russia. Afghanistan was under control by the Taliban. Assad was gone. And Israel and various parts of the Middle East were in such bad conflict, we had massive hostages on both sides. That's what we were left with, just in terms of foreign policy. In addition to that, the safety of American citizens in cities was so bad. Do you know that in New York, when women go to ride the subway, women just in traditional, modest outfits, even though they will put on large T-shirts over them because they're afraid of being touched, because they're afraid of being groped. That's what they turned New York City into. And that would be at 6 a.m. or noon, not hours in the middle of the night where things could be going on. That's what has happened under Democrat rule. That's the reality that Trump was left with.
Yeah, and like Elaine Willard is saying, Elaine, good to see you. She said it wasn't fair to the legal immigrants, and I think that was a backlash that they didn't. I don't think the Democrats ever framed that argument and never considered the legal immigrants in this whole farce that they've been doing for 20 years. It's not fair to the people that did wait in line and did get it right. It's just like my friend's worker. I mean, to me, if he's not willing to go down and become a citizen of the country, go back home. I'm sorry. I love you, but go back home. That's not a being incompassionate. But Magdalene, I think that's a lot of them because the administration before this one allowed them to do it. It ain't going to happen under Trump. I'm going to tell you right now, they're running scared, and we've got a video we're going to play later about Selena Gomez, who was having a meltdown tonight, and Tom Homan basically told her, said, no, we ain't taking the people of Mexico away. We're taking the rapists, the murderers, the thieves, the killers, the pedophiles, the child rapists. That's who we're going after. We're not taking your people, Selena. Yeah. And when you hear these celebrities, I got to ask you this. We got about 10 minutes. When you hear these celebrities like this, as a young person, do these celebrities resonate with the young people? I don't think they do as much as they think they do.
I mean, they resonate in terms of the music you listen to. Look, I love Selena Gomez music. I'm a huge fan. If I want to listen to a song, I'm going to listen to a song. But also, having been a fan of Selena Gomez, her entire career has been targeted towards white Americans.
Yes, it has.
Everything she has done, from the music she released to the clothing, I mean, everything, every single thing. Her merchandise wasn't even in Spanish. So give me a break there.
I know. All righty. Anything else you want to share with us tonight? Anything on your heart? Anything on your mind about this first week of Trump? I think I'd give him an A++. I don't even give him an A+. I give him an A+ with extra credit. I think he's hitting a home run. And I just want to tell these Dems something. I'll say it while you're on the show. I think they better pace their anger and pace their hatred of Trump. They got 3 years. They got 3 years and 360 days to go, buddy. I mean, I would be pacing myself a little bit, wouldn't you?
I would be, and Bill Maher said it best. He said Trump is cool now.
Yeah, he's
That's
cool.
the reality they're dealing with. Well, they spent 4 years setting the world on fire and dooming us all to poverty and unsafety. What did they expect? I think the best thing Trump can do is make it not about himself all the time. Have those competent deputies. I mean, Tom Homan is just killing it. He had Dr. Phil with him recently. He is the face of this effort. That was brilliant, making him in a position where he didn't have to be confirmed, so he didn't have the circus of the confirmation hearings, but having him be the leader there. And look, he's allowed to have a border czar. Kamala Harris was Joe Biden's border czar. Yeah,
that's very true, buddy. That's very true. Well, kid, it's always a pleasure. And look, you're going to be on quite a bit this year, and I'm going to try to get this worked out with you. We're going to have a meeting soon and get some technical stuff worked out, because I'd love for you to be our host in waiting when I'm not here, sometimes traveling, so the show can go on when I'm not here, and we'd love to have you sit in this chair remotely. And but listen, we love you and I appreciate you, and I want you to know that when you're on, I get so many compliments of your wisdom, and I just tell them I've raised you right. She's laughing at that. No, I appreciate your insight. Anything else you want to say before we let you go?
Yeah, I think one of the things is, if Tulsi Gabbard doesn't get confirmed, don't be devastated. Because I will tell you, I follow this issue so closely. It is not a lack of, and look, you and I talk about the lack of Republican loyalty and unity. That is not the case. She is not being prepared. I don't think she's ready or taking this as seriously as she should be. So if she doesn't get confirmed, it's not because Republicans were not loyal. It's because she was not ready.
And I got a lot of people that don't like Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not a big fan of her. I'm not saying I dislike her. Now, we got one, my dear buddy James Akers. He loves her to death. I just think it's not going to be a loss. I think that may be the one person that Trump loses that is going to probably be the best for the country and him. He may not see it right now, but I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. And look, if she don't want to get her paperwork together, as you said, that's her fault. That's her fault.
Yeah.
So that's it. All right, buddy. Hey, I do want to ask you a question before you go. Today is the 80th anniversary of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Now, there's no truth to the rumor that Chris was around 80 years ago, but I do want to ask you in a serious manner, what's your thoughts as a young people? How's the young people viewing this anti-Semitism that we see in 2025? Because, Magdalene, we've got people in this country that deny that Holocaust even happened. There are X accounts, Telegram rooms, even spiritual voices that they have never to this day, to this moment, condemned the Hamas atrocities of October the 7th. And I will tell you this, I do not believe that a lot of these hostages that they're claiming that they're going to give Israel back are even alive. And I think that Israel faced something a year and a half ago that is basically on the level of the Holocaust 80 years ago. But I'm curious how your generation views that. Real quick, you got about 5 minutes. What's your thoughts on that?
I think there is a great deal of anti-Semitism in the young right-wing area, and I think it's a very sad thing because it's nonsense. The things that they peddle, the lies, it's a very bad thing. And I think one of the main perpetrators of that, unfortunately, has been Candace Owens. She has gone down a very nasty rabbit hole. And I will say, she is not somebody who is an authority on anything. She packaged herself as a thought leader, kind of like Jordan Peterson, and I never bought it. I was never on that team. And she has dove into a really nasty area of anti-Semitism and also of hostility towards Jewish people, which is very twisted. There is a level of hostility there. I think she's aided by her husband, who is a very powerful player in the conservative tech realm, and that is the only reason she's still platformed at all. And I think she's responsible for a lot of what we've seen.
Why do you think what turned her on the Jews? Mm-hmm. What turned her on the Jews?
Well, honestly, I think she got in with the Andrew Tate thing, and Andrew Tate's entire network is very anti-Semitic, and it always has been. And I think when she interviewed him, and I don't understand this, but I see this happen to a lot of conservative women. They interview him, and they fall into this trap of like, he's some sort of like guru and he understands the world and what he says is fact. It's not. It's ridiculous. Just because someone supports Trump doesn't mean they're right about everything. And I think she fell into this idea that the Jewish people are running the world and all this twisted stuff. And it really rotted her brain. And people were mad at Ben Shapiro for, I think, being supportive of her leaving his organization. But why would he employ someone who, at minimum, is just saying things that are offensive to 80% of the audience? It wasn't like he went against what the audience wanted. She's really become very, very disruptive and very negative, and I think she makes it a bad place in conservatism sometimes.
Do you think this destroys her brand? And I hate to use that word. I don't even call what she's doing a brand.
I think so. I think so. I don't know who'd want to be associated with her. If I was representing a client in conservatism and they had an opportunity to go on her show and it wasn't just a show where they'd be debating against her, I'd say don't do it. I don't know what she had. For somebody who had gained so much so quickly in conservatism, I don't think she's recognized that she's fallen so quickly. And the day she does, I wonder if she'll regret the horrible anti-Semitic things she's pushed, especially in the young conservative world. It really does bother me what she's turned into.
But it bothers me too. And the whole anti-Semitic, and look, I see it also on the spiritual side. There's a lot of spiritual voices, pastors, prophets, and other spiritual leaders of this country that have that same spirit on them, and it is ugly. It is an absolute ugly thing. And Elie Wiesel, I've been to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. Didn't get to go this time because of the weather, but every time I go up there, I see it. And one of the things that meets you in that hall is that his famous words were, "May this never happen again, never again." And Magdalene, the seeds that are being planted tonight. Look, I'm not saying that. Of course, there's some biblical history and prophecy coming of this, but I will say this, and I'm talking politically tonight. I don't think that the nations of the world are at that point yet, but I tell you what, the anti-Semitic seeds that were in Nazi Germany in 1937 and 38, they're in this world tonight, and they're in America tonight. And I think we better be wise to pay attention to what we're hearing. Same rhetoric that was going on 80 years ago.
Yeah, it was. And I get tired of being told, oh, well, I don't understand, or other people who view this the way I do, we don't understand the nuance of what she's talking about. We don't know history well enough. Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
And I think that what she's done is she's facilitated a new lane of anti-Semitism that she's carved out for herself. And it's not even just anti-Semitism, the hatred she spews about things, her fact that she tries to package it as she's a very conservative person. Nobody else says, this is the Andrew Tate wing of this party. And I will tell you, it delivers us nothing. We get nothing out of it, so we should cut it out.
So true, kid, and wise wisdom coming from you as always. Listen, I might have you back on, maybe even this week or next. We're going to try to do this weekly, okay? And I appreciate you being on tonight, and I'll talk to you soon, very, very soon, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mag. Have a good night. Be safe, hon.
You too.
Magdalene Rose, everybody. I truly mean this. I truly mean this. She is like a daughter to me. And I'm grateful for her, and that was good stuff tonight. If you enjoyed it, put some fire in that house. I've got some thoughts on the Holocaust, and then we're going to play a video to her and let you go tonight. This is going to be our theme this week. We're going to be talking with this. We had planned to have Bianca Gracia with us tonight, or Orlando Rodriguez. They had a tremendous events, some tremendous events at the inauguration, the Latinos for Trump group, and we were going to talk to them about it, but they're both sick. They got sick in D.C. from this weather, and so Magdalene filled in for them tonight. She did a great job. I tell you, I love that kid. I do. I don't mean, I'm not just saying this to say it to flatter her. I don't think I've ever seen a kid that age with as much smarts, and I mean that. And her perspective is beyond words intelligent. And there's some things that Magdalene says, and I'm sure some of us older folk, we probably not flinch about it, but we don't see the things the same way that the younger generation does. But I tell you what I do, even if I don't see eye to eye, I listen to them, because if the Lord tarries, Chris McDonald is drinking his spaghetti out of a straw one day. People like Magdalene going to be running this country. So I'm listening intently to what they've got to say. But she gives me hope that there is going to be a group of conservative young people that are going to be behind us, fighting this fight for freedom. Smart kid, just smart kid. I want to talk to you. I do want to play that video first before we do anything else. I got this video. You got to see the meltdown. You got to see the meltdown of Selena Gomez. We're going to talk about this a lot this week. We've got some other memes from the Australian Jewish Society tonight and other groups. We mentioned it over the weekend. Happy post-Australia Day to all you Australians down there, down under, Cleo, and some others that watch the show. And this situation with the border was brought up tonight on Fox News with, it was today I should say, with Martha Smith and Tom Homan, who is not, let's just say that Tom Homan is letting it all hang out and deporting people faster than the Titanic sank in the North Atlantic. I want you to listen to this. Roll the tape with this. This is Selena Gomez. She was having a meltdown, and Martha Smith was talking to Tom Homan about it. Roll the tape.
Don't know if you've had a chance to see a video that has been going viral over the past hour or so. We're still working to clear it and show it. In fact, the Hollywood celebrity who posted it has now deleted it, I think because probably she faced a lot of backlash for it, noting even the New York Times and Fox News polls show that a majority of American respondents are in favor of deportations of criminals and gang members. She posted a video sobbing. She was crying in it. She said, "All my people are getting attacked," with the picture of a Mexican flag. Again, she has now taken that down. But what do you say to those who are out there saying that these are everyday people, these are families that are being attacked and dragged out of their homes? How do you respond to that?
I don't think we arrested any families. We've arrested public safety threats and national security threats, bottom line. And look, President Trump won the election on this one issue, securing our border and saving lives. What happened on our southern border last 4 years is the biggest national security threat this country's seen, at least in my lifetime, because we got over 2 million known gotaways. We got a 600% increase in sex trafficking. We got a record number of terrorists crossing the border on the terrorist watch list. We have 250,000 Americans die from fentanyl coming across the open border. We're going to do this job, and we're going to enforce the laws of this country. If they don't like it, then go to Congress and change the law. We're going to do this operational apology. We're going to make our community safer. We're going to save. Once we lock that border on continuous operation, you're going to see fentanyl deaths decrease, illegal alien crime decrease, sex trafficking decrease. It's just all for the good of this nation, and we're going to keep going. No apologies. We're moving forward.
And all I can say to that is,
I'm really in favor.
Whoops, not that one. Where is my, what do I have to say to that tonight?
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
I do understand that, but I'm also trying to say this one right here, if I can find it. Did I lose it? Please tell me I didn't delete. I didn't delete Sherlock Holmes tonight.
Big audience here. Many of them seem to be patriotic supporters of you, Mr. Hegseth. Some of them seem to be liberal critics.
Oh, well. I had... Anyway, that is not Sherlock Holmes. I'll agree with everything Tom Holman just said there. I agree with it. It's elementary, my dear Watson, to me. You're getting people out that are trying to kill you, rape you, maim you. And the way I look at it, you got to do what you got to do. And we're not coming after your people, Selena. If your people would, as I told my dear friend today, if your people would get their carcasses down to the citizenship place and apply for citizenship and come in the right way and stop breaking our laws and start coming across our borders and stop killing our kids and start raping our children and stop killing people drunk driving because you don't know how to drive. If you would stop doing all that stuff, your people would be okay. We're not coming after your people. This Hollywood bunch, I swear, I don't know who they think they are. Hang on just a second. That's Dennis Quaid. I'll let Dennis... Hang on. For the next... It's not Dennis, who I want tonight. I'm going to find that. Doggone it. I had it up, but I guess I didn't have it ready to go as I thought I would. Is this it? Let's see what this one is.
You can't handle the truth.
That's Pete. That's a better one. And I guess Selena could not handle the truth of Tom Holman. All right, listen. I really came on tonight. We'll talk about Selena more tomorrow night. I've got more to say about her, and we got other video. But tonight, I want to spend the next just 15 minutes or so, and then we're going to wrap it up tonight on the Holocaust. Today is the 80th anniversary, if you can believe that, of the liberation of Auschwitz. And it was the end of the most deadliest war of this century, the World War II. 55 million people perished in that war. We've not had that number perish in any war in this entire century. But what made the Second World War so bad was that within that 55 million, there was a systematic slaughter of Jews, of 6 million people. I am appalled, and I think Magdalene brought it up, and I'm glad she did. Voices like Candace Owens. But folks, it's not just Candace Owens. There are prophets out there, and I'm not going to name them. But there are spiritual voices that are either silent in the face of this anti-Semitism. They've had nothing good to say about Israel. They can't even post something that says, I'm heartbroken over the terrorist attack of October the 7th. There's certain voices spiritually that they act so spiritual that they're hearing from God on everything, and they have just got their finger and their pulse, and they've just got their finger and pulse on heaven, and they can't even post a post that says that we condemn the violence of Hamas, because let me tell you what's in their heart, what's lurking in their heart. They have no problem with what Hamas did. And I'm going to tell you this. As I told Magdalene, this anti-Semitic spirit that has erupted over the last couple of years in this nation, it's not, you can't put it at the foot of anybody's feet, because this is part of the devil's attempt to destroy the Jewish people. There are so many spiritual lessons behind this, and maybe Wednesday night when we do our study in Revelation, we may talk about a few, because this whole week needs to be dedicated to the remembrance of the Holocaust. And we talked about one Holocaust Sunday, about the abortion with the babies. Well, this Holocaust was about the Jews. And it's ironic that we have had silence out of the pulpit on both. It's ironic that there's been silence about both. You've got Holocaust deniers in the church. You've got preachers that are preaching sermons that condemn Israel and call it an apartheid state. The late Jimmy Carter was such a leader. And saying Jimmy Carter is a Christian because he taught Sunday school is like saying that you're a car because you stand in a garage. That's not what made him a Christian. He had some of the most virtual anti-Semitic remarks, anti-Israel, hateful remarks over his course of his post-presidency. And a lot of the things that he did while he was president was probably even worse. Barack Obama was a rabid anti-Semite. Barack Obama was, of course, we believe, Muslim, and he even admitted that he had Muslim ties, and that shouldn't shock us. Joe Biden probably treated Israel above all the presidents, the worst of any of them. Bush Jr., I think, was a hypocrite. He would treat Israel right to their face and backstab them in the back. Reagan tried his best to treat Israel right, but there were things even Reagan did. But Bush Sr. was really the architect of the Land for Peace deal that started a trend of this nation betraying Israel. Let me say this about the Holocaust. Some of you may or may not know this. America could have stopped this atrocity 80 years ago. FDR was probably, him and Eleanor were probably one of the first leaders that we had in this country that was outwardly anti-Semitic. There were people in his cabinet that was pushing him to turn a blind eye to what Hitler was doing. It was well known early on in the war that Hitler was exterminating the Jews. It was no secret. There was reports getting out into this White House. I've told the story of the St. Louis. I don't have time to get into it tonight. There was a ship of about 939 Jews that tried to flee Germany, and you know the story. The sad story is they got threatened by the United States government off the coast of Cuba that if they came within American waters, they're going to blow them out of the water. Well, that ship had to turn back. No country would take those Jews. A few of them got off in the Dominican Republic at extortion rates. They were basically extorted for their lives, having to give up thousands and tens of thousands of dollars just for safety from this fascist regime that was basically in power. And that ship went back, and I think out of the 939, less than 100 of those Jews survived the death camps of Auschwitz and others that Hitler used to literally gas a group of people. Elie Wiesel, as I said, he was a Auschwitz survivor, and his big saying was never again before he died. I remember seeing an interview with him. It was during the Rwanda genocide back in 1994, and they were trying to liken what happened to the Jewish people to what was going on in Rwanda. And because the Rwanda situation was a civil war between the Tutsis and the Hutus, and the Tutsis were being exterminated by the government and forces within the Rwandan government, and nearly 1.5 million people perished in just a matter of 3 months. If that would have been allowed to go on, there ain't telling how many people would have been slaughtered. But thank God, Belgium and France finally came to their senses, came to the rescue of the people that were being exterminated, and the UN finally put some muscle behind them for a change. But the interesting thing about this, and the reason I mention Rwanda, is what the Clinton administration did, and they're describing it. They would never use the word genocide. And I've thought many times, had this Holocaust happened, had Hitler, had a leader been in power today with social media, can you imagine Hitler having the ability to spread his hate over social media? Can you imagine Hitler having a YouTube channel? Can you imagine Hitler having the influence that he would have had worldwide had he had a pulpit sort of, because they didn't have the internet back in the 30s. They didn't have TV as we know it. I mean, there was some of that, but it was nothing compared to the reach that he would have had. If for those of you that are history people, the way Hitler got his message out was through the trailers at the movie theater. When you went to see a movie, Hitler, they would purchase minutes before then, and he would spread his message of fascism. And, you know, the British would try to counter that with propaganda of their own. But this was a propaganda war, but it was fought in the theaters. People would see that message. But it was very clear to the Americans early on in this war that this systematic destruction of a race was going on. I'll just say this real quick, and I'm not going to spend, I've got about 10 more minutes. The spiritual aspect of this, folks, the world hates, let me change that. Israel has rejected Christ. They don't receive Christ, and in many ways Israel hates Christ. The world, though, hates Israel because of Christ. Israel don't realize it tonight. The world don't realize it tonight. The world's hatred and Satan's hatred for that Jewish race goes way beyond a racial thing. It goes way beyond a political matter. It goes way beyond just a feeling of Jew hatred. It's not even Jew-hating talk. This is something that's spiritual in nature. It's an ancient hatred that goes back to nearly 6,000 years. But that ancient hatred had never been enveloped and encompassed in a leader like Adolf Hitler. Haman had probably been the only biblical example of somebody that had tried to do what Hitler did. And Haman failed, Hitler failed. Stalin would basically do the same thing. After the war, he would do these purges of the Jews in Russia. And the Jews have been fighting for their life ever since. But the war has shifted now, and it's no longer governments trying to destroy the Jews, it's propaganda. And it is anti-Semitic voices. Stu Peters comes to mind. He's one of the most virtual, ugly, demonically inspired anti-Semites out there. And Candace Owens is a close second. And there's other voices that I could name tonight that make me regurgitate. And I think the silence of the church on this is just as deafening and just as ugly and just as hateful as the silence of the church is on the abortion issue. I told my brother tonight, talking to him, he asked me about the Right to Life March, and I said, John, I said, I love the Right to Life March, but I said, this is the second one I've been to, and I said, I've been told this firsthand, and I've seen it. I saw it firsthand Friday. There was no Protestants there, hardly at all. Protestant churches outsourced this. And the same people that have outsourced the abortion fight are the same people that have outsourced the fight against anti-Semitism. And folks, it's an end time thing. The world is going to turn on Israel. The world is going to hate Israel. They hate Israel tonight because they hate Christ. The world don't understand that. The world thinks that it's just, again, as Magdalene pointed out, this conspiracy theory that the Jews control the banks and control the world. That's what Hitler pushed. Hitler dehumanized them. They became nothing more than animals and vermin to him. Auschwitz was the part of what we call the final solution when the Germans had gotten tired of the first start of the Holocaust, really started in the eastern hills of Russia, the Eastern Front, and it was in the Ukraine of all places. Kadabar became one of the most bloodiest scenes of the Holocaust in the first 2.5 years of that. And these German shooting regiments, and they would outsource this to the government. And what they would do, they would haul these Jews in trains to near Ukraine and the western part of the Soviet Union. And they would take them into these forests. They would make them dig their own grave, and they would literally gun them down with machine guns. And it was through shooting squads that all this was being done. And some demonically inspired individual named Joseph Goebbels and Heinrich Himmler and Göring and other German leaders came to the conclusion in 1942 that that was exterminating the Jews too slowly. And they came up with this idea. They said, well, if we can gas them all at one time, we can do it in a more compact way. And somebody came up with this idea. And it sure wasn't. Somebody came up with this idea that we're going to gas them to death. And that's what they did. Treblinka, Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen, other death camps all over Europe. There are many that you don't hear about, but they were there. Poland was the scene of most Jews. 1 million people itself. 1 million of the 6 died. 1.5 million of the 6 died at Auschwitz alone. They would starve these people to death. And when they became useless and working, they put them in these gas chambers. They put those cyanide tablets down. and instantaneously tens of thousands would perish in matters of minutes. And they did this without conscience. Go forward 80 years tonight, folks. You would hope that we've learned a lesson from the past. You hope that we've learned a lesson from this. But on this International Remembrance Day of the Holocaust, you got people that don't even it's not just they don't even remember it. They don't believe it happened. They deny it. Candace Owens is a denier. Candace Owens throws shade out there that, well, there's just some things about that you just don't understand, and you don't understand history. Candace, let me tell you something tonight. I blanking well know history. And I also know that you are a rabid anti-Semite. You should be ashamed of yourself. You got famous for running your mouth, and you got famous for being this fighter for conservative values. You have no idea about values, Candace. Stu, you have no idea what you're doing. And all I can say is, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. But I'm speaking beyond Candace and Stu to the prophetic community tonight. You should be ashamed of yourself too. Some of you are putting out there that the Star of David is a demonic symbol. That's anti-Semitism. Some of you putting out there that that the Jews are the Mossad is the great evil Satan of the world, and no other organization but the Mossad is behind all the evil in the world. That's anti-Semitism, folks. That's anti-Semitism. When the Jews are despaired for their handling of money and these things like that, and the Jewish people, folks, have contributed to this world more so than any people race, than any group in the universe. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that that group has been such a blessing to the earth? Well, let me remind the prophetic community, many of them which don't know their Bible, and they don't read their Bible because they think the Bible is not right. They don't even think the Bible's a moral compass. They think the Bible is messed up because it's got 66 books in it, and they try to throw shade on the Bible and the Word of God. They think that there's 778 hidden books out there, that if we could just get all those hidden books, that it would give us a complete understanding of things. No, it will not. There is no such entity out there of 778 books. That's a farce. That is a lie. That is a damnable demonic lie of Satan. The Word of God in its fullness right now is the full revelation of God. There are no other works out there. There are no other books coming. And there is no other thing that God's going to hold us accountable to except His written word. And in His written word in Genesis 12:3, it says, I will bless them that bless you, and in your seed, Abraham, will all the nations of the earth be blessed. Why do you think Israel fights for her survival? Why do you think Satan puts a bullseye on this nation? Why do you think Satan makes people hate the Jews? I tell you why. It was through them that the nations of the earth were blessed through Christ. It's not even ultimately about Israel. It's about the Savior that came through the loins of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob, whose surname is Israel. Israel. It's right there in the Bible, by the way, in Genesis 12, and Genesis 13, and Genesis 15, Genesis 17, and Genesis 22, and Genesis 25, and 26, 27, Genesis 28, 29, Genesis 30. Just in the story of Joseph. How do you think Israel became Israel? It went down into Egypt as Jacob's 12 boys, as a people group, and it came out 9 months later after 430 years of bondage as a nation forged in the fire of slavery, forged in the fire of Pharaoh's despots trying to destroy her. The Pharaohs have done it, tried to do it. Hamans have tried to do it. The Hitlers have tried to do it. The Stalins have tried to do it. The Khomeinis in Iran have tried to do it. And the anti-Semitic voices in America have tried to do it as well. Where do you think these dumb kids, these dumb blank kids on these campuses are getting their ideas from to hate Israel and free Palestine and Palestine from the river to the sea? Where do you think them kids are getting that stuff from? These kids don't even know how to tie their shoe and chew gum. They're getting it from their mama and daddy and listening to the social media platforms of prophets. and religious leaders and spiritual leaders and their own pastors and people that have no moral clarity whatsoever. And let me tell you this, folks, it is the same issue of silence, and the things that are being done in the name of anti-Semitism is exactly the same thing being done against, and the silence about abortion, it's the same moral argument. You got two classes of people that the world have dehumanized, even 80 years later. Even 80 years later. I want to play you something real quick. I'm right at 1 hour and 2 minutes, and I'm not going to keep you much longer because we're going to pick this up this week. I want to show you this. This is the National Holocaust Museum. That's Elie Wiesel as a child. He was taken to Auschwitz as a young boy. He survived it. He survived it. And they had, he's the museum's founding chairman. He was deported to Auschwitz with his family in May of 1944. He was selected for forced labor and survived. He later said, quote, "I thought in 1945 anti-Semitism died in Auschwitz, but I was wrong. Its victims perished. Anti-Semitism did not." The United Nations has designated January 27th, which is tonight, the anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau. Birkenau was another camp, as a time to remember the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and the millions of other victims of Nazi persecution. As we mark the 80th anniversary of that liberation, we are witnessing a global surge in anti-Semitism. And it goes on to talk about the other things that the museum is doing. I want to play this video for you, folks. It's about 3 minutes. And again, we're gonna spend some time this week on this. We are absolutely going to spend some time. This is about a 5-minute video, and then we're going to call it good night. I want you to listen to these survivors of Auschwitz. This is for all the Holocaust deniers and the silent voices that claim this isn't true. And the shameful rhetoric coming from telegram rooms and religious channels about the Jewish race tonight. Roll the tape.
I was 13 and a half when I arrived in Auschwitz.
I was 14.
2 weeks after my 13th birthday.
There was an announcement that we should go to the train that was on the tracks. They were rushing us, screaming, yelling, "Go fast, fast, hurry."
My favorite teacher was shot on the step because she absolutely refused to get on to the train.
We tried very hard to stay together as a family and hold on to each other.
We did not have place to sit. We were standing all along.
On the second or third day, when people started dying in the car, that was a relief. Dead bodies could be stacked like cordwood, and that created a little more space.
The doors opened and they started yelling, "Get out, get out."
There was the smell, this incredible, inhuman, otherworldly stench.
There was bedlam because they were immediately beginning to separate families.
2 SS officers were directing people right or left.
We children held each other's hands, we held our parents' hands. I mean, we're just literally torn apart. And in a matter of minutes.
I was separated from my mother. I remember my dad going up that way. I remember staying with my sister.
I had a younger sister holding her hand. A stick came down between us and she was sent off. I lost her. I lost my little sister somehow. Before we were taken to barracks, we were processed, undressed, the hair cut, body hair cut. We came out looking identical. Sisters, mothers wouldn't identify each other. We were no longer people.
You're thrown some ragged, used, filthy, striped uniforms. You're tossed some shoes with wooden soles. Then you get into the barracks, and then life starts. and life was learning to die.
When we entered the barrack, minutes after we got in, a young woman was running towards my sister. She told us right away, "I want you to know that your mother and your siblings are already dead." And that was also a shock, but an unbelievable one. I remember rejecting it completely.
I just felt terrified the whole time I was there. So scared, because they were looking at us like we were subhumans. They treated us like subhumans. Actually. They had all the power, and we were nothing. We were just...
That was the intent.
Yes.
One after the other, my classmates were dying of hunger, exhaustion, and just total mental and physical collapse. I was the last one.
We were next to a gas chamber and crematorium with just an electrified fence. We saw the huge numbers of people walking from the train past our barrack into the gas chamber. And often they talked to us. They call out, "Where are you from? And what's your name? And do you know so-and-so?" Minutes later, the chimneys were belching fire so hard that it was like a roaring sound. It was just unbelievable. It wasn't smoke, it was flames, like a wind. And we had just seen them, we had just talked to them. Little children carried by their mothers, pregnant women. And we can't tell them that they have a few minutes to live. My memory of Auschwitz is the actual extermination. And anything else that was good or bad cannot be compared.
It was a universe of its own. It was below the human understanding, tolerance, ability to absorb.
It's constantly with me. I just can't believe it that people can deny something that was so right there in front of their eyes. My story, coming from my mouth, cannot be denied.
January the 27th, 1945, 80 years ago tonight, that camp was liberated. And touching stories, that's from the Holocaust Museum, and we want to thank them for the use of that. I'm going to wrap it up with this, folks. I'll say tonight what I said to Magdalene. The seeds that led to that 80 years ago, 87 years ago now, because it was really 1937 when it started, 36, 37, but in earnest in 38 with the Night of the Broken Glass, that's when the Holocaust, most historians believe, officially started. I would like to say that 87 years later, as Elie Wiesel said, that the anti-Semitism would have died at Auschwitz. It has not. It has just been remolded and repackaged with the same hatred. I would hate to think that we would repeat the history of that, but I can't be certain tonight that we will. And we won't. And a lot of it, sadly, is not coming even from these moronic kids on these campuses. They're not doing this, folks. Some of these kids, as I said, they don't even know what 2 and 2 are. They couldn't tell you what 6 times 4 is. They've heard it. And they're just repeating the rhetoric that they've been taught. Somebody asked a question, maybe Liz Goldman, how can people do it? How can they deny this? They can deny it, Liz. They can deny it. It's a darkness of the heart, a darkness of the mind, a darkness of the soul. The bigger question is, how could Nazi Germany, let me say this as I close tonight. The bigger question is, how could a civilized nation as Germany, that claimed to be Christian, sit by and let Hitler do this without even uttering a word of protest. You only had 2 voices in all of Germany that we know about in history that stood up to Hitler. They both died. Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Martin Niemöller. And they both perished in Nazi camp. There were other ministers that stood up that we don't hear about in history. They were taken away and likely killed. Question for you tonight as I leave you. We came close to having a regime that probably would have done something similar to this. Thank God for President Trump tonight. But should the event arise in the future that somebody in the world rises up and tries to do this again, question to you Christians, are we going to be silent again? Like the German church was silent in 1937, 38, 39, 40. Do you realize, folks, that there were Assembly of God churches that would invite the Jews to the church? The Jews would come thinking they were coming for safety. And the church would have the German authorities waiting for the Jews. They'd haul them off. The trains would go by the churches at night. The screams would be coming from those trains. The Assemblies of God and other Pentecostal churches, other Baptist churches and non-denominational churches, and they would sing the courses that they were singing to Jesus louder so as to drown their ears of the screams coming from the trains. Very similar to Israel of old and the heathen nations during Israel's time that would beat those pom-poms and drums to drown out the screams of the babies being murdered in the fire of Baal. Question is tonight, would we act any differently 80 years later? Food for thought. And before you jump in there and say, oh yeah, we would, I'd think hard about that. Elie Wiesel was right. And people died in Auschwitz. Auschwitz ended the hatred and the murder, and the mass murder and the gassing to death of millions of Jews ended in 1945, but anti-Semitism didn't die in 1945. It still lives today. I hope you've had a good night tonight. We had a great show with Magdalene. I hope you enjoyed it. I got more thoughts to say about this, but I'm going to let you go tonight. Listen, I love you. We appreciate you. I want to say this to the Jewish people. You got a friend here. You will never hear an anti-Semitic remark coming from this network. We support Israel. And I will say this to you tonight without blinking. You can't find America in the Bible, but you can find Israel all over the Bible. And the future of this nation depends on the survival of Israel. You can take that to the bank. Now, you ain't got to believe that. And that's all right if you don't. But I'll say it. We're pro-Israel here on this network. And we always will be pro-Israel. And there will be no anti-Semitic stuff coming through this network or in that chat ever. Because we believe that Israel has a destiny on her. She's got a terrible future ahead, short term. All Israel will be saved. All Israel will be saved at the end. I cannot say that about our own country tonight. I pray it does, but I can't say for sure because the Bible's totally silent. It's not silent about Israel and her future. Think on those things. I'll be back here in the morning. We'll see you guys in the morning on the Bible study. And then I'll be back here tomorrow night. Not sure who we're going to have. Brad Johnson maybe with us tomorrow night. Eric Kieran. And we got Andy Griffin coming Wednesday night at 6 to talk about pro-life man and his thoughts on the Right to Life March. We love you all tonight. May we never forget the events of 1937 through 45. May it never happen again. Good night, everybody. Be blessed out there. And put some fire in that house if you enjoyed the show tonight. Good night, everybody.